my name's Rebecca, big fan of yours for a while. My son is actually here, and he's the one who turned me on to you. So
thank you, Rebecca's son.
Yeah. I know that the freedom dividend is like your main point, and it sets you apart from the other candidates, but climate change is obviously the crisis of our entire generation and our world. So I would love to hear more from you about your plans for climate change.
Thank you, Rebecca. How many of you are concerned about climate change? If you don't have your hand up, you really should be up. So, I staked out the new third position on climate change. Position number 1, we need to fight climate change. Position number 2, climate change is a hoax. And then position number 3 is it's worse than we think. And I'm in camp number 3. July was the warmest month in human history. Last 4 years have been the 4 warmest years in recorded history. Greenland just reported that its ice pack is melting at the rate projected in 2070 today, 51 years earlier than projected. This is just going to get worse and worse. And I was just in New Hampshire. They have buildings that are now flooding regularly, and they just had a multi-million-dollar shrimping business in Portsmouth go to zero because the water got warmer and the shrimp died, and like all sorts of things are changing in the Atlantic Ocean. The Atlantic Ocean is losing 4 to 8% of its biomass every year. And that's incredible if you extrapolate that over time. Here in Nevada, again, you guys are at ground zero. You're at ground zero of automation of your jobs. You're at ground zero of climate change because of water supply issues and obviously the heat. You're a little bit out of the entire forest fire zone, but it's not that far away, and these issues affect the entire West. So we need to get much, much more aggressive on climate change. And I released a 5-part plan that spans about 50 pages. If you're into it, Rebecca, if you go to yang2020.com and poke around a little bit, you'll find this climate change plan. But I'll summarize for you what the 5 components are. Number 1, we need to take the subsidies that are going to fossil fuel companies, zero them out, and subsidize solar and wind and renewable energy at the same time. Number 2, we have to try and get the rest of the world to follow suit, because the United States of America is only 15% of global emissions. And what's happening right now is China is going to developing countries in Africa and saying, hey, we've got a power plant for you, it burns coal. And what does the African nation say?
Where's the coal?
I love it, because they just want cheap energy. They're not really thinking about carbon emissions. And so our goal has to be to go to that same country and say, how about you pass on the coal burning power plant and take these solar panels and wind turbines instead, and we're going to subsidize them up the wazoo to make this a no-brainer for you. That is the only way we can get the 85% the rest of the world under control. Even if we get our 15% under control, the rest of the world keeps going, it's not going to go well for us at all. Number 3 is we have to start trying to do more of the good and not just less of the bad, because unfortunately at this point the horse is out of the barn. So if we cut our emissions, it's still going to get warmer, we're still going to be experiencing the worst effects of climate change. So we need to actively actually reforest tracts of land to try and capture more carbon. We need to reseed ocean beds with plant life to try and resuscitate some of these marine ecosystems. We actually have to start trying to undo and reverse the damage that we're doing on the ground. The 4th thing is that we need to actually protect our people. Who suffers the most in a natural disaster like a hurricane or a flood?
Farmers.
Poor people and minorities, which unfortunately, they're highly, highly overlapping in American life. People who can't just get into a car and drive to safety because maybe they don't have a car, or maybe they don't have any place safe to drive to. So if we put economic resources into our hands, our people will be better able to protect ourselves. And then we need to invest hundreds of billions of dollars in trying to make our communities more resilient and future-proof. This could mean anything from raising levies to elevating certain parts of a town to, in some cases, even having incentives to relocate. Because there are already climate refugees in the United States of America. We already moved a town in Louisiana that was essentially going underwater. And we said, hey, we're gonna have to relocate you. Now, this is not a country where we just wanna go around saying, hey, you have to move. So we have to try and create incentives for people to relocate from places that are going to become consistently flooded or less and less inhabitable over time. And the 5th thing is we should have a constitutional amendment so that safeguarding the environment is an intergenerational responsibility of our government. So we're not just doing something like that. is if we actually introduce sustainability into our economic measurements. Because what happens right now in the United States is this. You go to people, 78% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. Almost half can't afford an unexpected $400 bill. So when you go to them and say, hey, we need to worry about climate change, what do they say? I can't pay my bills. The penguins will have to wait. So first, we get their head up by saying, look, $1,000 a month, your future is actually more stable and secure. Your kid's future is actually more stable and secure. And now we have to fight climate change, and then they'll have their head up and be like, oh yeah, we do need to fight climate change. Like you can actually reverse that mindset of like, screw you, like I'm worried about next month. To like, oh yeah, like that's a problem. Not 100%, because that's not the way our brains work. But you can actually like rev it up significantly and put us in position to tackle climate change more quickly. And the other thing that they hear all the time is if you say we have to fight climate change, you know what they hear? Higher costs, fewer jobs, greater inconvenience. And so that's the tug of war we have to try and do away with and say, look, economic progress is sustainability. It's like this actually is the way we measure progress. And then they can't get into this like, oh, you're somehow anti-jobs, you're trying to increase costs or any of this stuff. We have to try and internalize the true costs of climate change. Because the fact is, if climate change goes unchecked, how much damage will it do? Trillions of dollars. Hundreds of thousands of lives, right? Like, so what we have to do is we have to introduce those costs into the measures so that everyone gets aligned and we don't get stuck in this tug of war.